They thought she was weak. They thought her silence was surrender. They thought her limp and her worn-out crutch made her helpless. But the bullies had no idea who they were dealing with, and when the dust of the farm road settled, they would regret every cruel word and every mocking laugh. The sun was dipping low beyond the wheat fields when Clara hobbled back from the barn, her crutch pressing into the dirt with every uneven step. The farm had been her entire life, quiet, simple, demanding, but it had also been her fortress. Out here, among the animals and the endless sky, she felt safe. It was only when she stepped into town, only when she crossed paths with the kids from school, that her chest grew tight and her hands trembled with dread. The taunts always began the same way. "Hey, Cripple Clara, where's your racehorse leg?" They laughed, a chorus of cruel amusement. She had learned to keep her head down, to walk faster even if it hurt, and to pretend she didn't hear. But silence was its own wound. Every insult carved deeper until she carried scars that no one could see. That afternoon, though, was different. The group of boys and girls waited by the fence as she returned from delivering milk to a neighbor. Their shadows stretched long across the road, blocking her path. "What's the rush, Clara?" One of them sneered, his voice laced with mockery. "You training for the Paralympics?" The laughter rose again. One of the girls snatched the basket from her hand, spilling the last of the milk onto the dusty ground. Another kicked her crutch, and Clara stumbled, crashing to her knees. Her palms scraped against gravel. Pain shot up her leg, but worse was the heat of humiliation burning her face. She could hear them chanting, voices ringing out like a cruel drumbeat, "Cripple, cripple, farm freak." The words hung in the air, twisting around her like a chain. She wanted to scream, to fight back, to show them who she really was. But she stayed down, breathing through the sting in her hands, letting their laughter echo into the wind. What none of them knew, what not even the teachers at school understood, was that Clara's silence wasn't weakness. It was training. For years, her grandfather had been shaping her in secret. A retired soldier, weathered and stern, he had taken her under his wing after the accident that had stolen her ability to run. He had seen something in her that no one else cared to look for, a fire hidden beneath the pain. "Your body may limp," he told her one night as they sat under the stars, "but your spirit doesn't. And if your spirit stands tall, no enemy can bring you to the ground." He taught her how to use her crutch not only for balance but as an extension of her arm. He showed her how to focus on her breath, how to listen to footsteps in the dark, how to turn her disadvantage into a weapon. The bullies never saw the girl who swung a wooden staff in the barn until sweat soaked her clothes and blisters tore her hands. They never saw the girl who could climb fences with one good leg and land light as a hawk. They never knew that while they laughed at her limp, she was learning to turn pain into strength. That night, after the incident on the road, Clara sat by the old oak tree at the edge of the farm. Her crutch leaned beside her, and in her lap rested the staff her grandfather had carved for her. She traced its smooth grain, feeling the power it represented. Her chest rose and fell with steady breaths as she whispered to herself, "No more." The chance to prove it came faster than she imagined. A week later, the town's harvest festival filled the square with music, food, and lanterns. Clara helped her parents with the farm stand, arranging jars of honey and baskets of apples. For a few hours, laughter and music dulled the memory of cruelty. But as night fell and the crowd grew restless, she spotted them, the same bullies, swaggering between booths, daring each other to cause trouble. She tried to ignore them, keeping her eyes on the apples, but their voices carried like knives. "Look who's here," one of them smirked. Farm Freak came to beg for attention. They surrounded her before she could retreat, knocking over the jars, smashing apples beneath their shoes. Her father was busy with customers, unaware of the circle closing in. "Dance for us, Clara," a boy jeered, shoving her shoulder. She stumbled, gripping her crutch tighter. "Come on, show us how cripples celebrate." Another laughed, pretending to limp dramatically. The crowd nearby turned their heads, but no one stepped forward. Pity and fear kept them frozen. Something in Clara snapped. For years she had borne their cruelty in silence. But now, in the glow of lanterns and the watchful eyes of the town, she felt her grandfather's voice echo through her bones. "Your spirit doesn't limp." She straightened, her crutch steady beneath her arm. Her eyes, once downcast, blazed with defiance. The boy reached to shove her again, but before his hand touched her, Clara moved. With a swift motion, she swung the crutch in a wide arc, striking his wrist with a crack that made him yelp. The crowd gasped. The others lunged, but Clara was faster. She pivoted, using her good leg to kick one in the stomach, sending him sprawling. Her crutch became a blur, striking knees, arms, and shoulders with precision born of years of practice. Each movement was sharp, controlled, unstoppable. Gasps turned to cheers as the crowd realized what they were witnessing. The disabled farm girl they had pitied was dismantling a gang of bullies in front of their eyes. Dust swirled around her as the bullies staggered, their arrogance shattered. Clara's breath came steady, her face calm, every strike a declaration, "I am not weak." One boy tried to grab her crutch, but she twisted, spinning it like a staff. The wooden tip stopped inches from his throat, and his eyes went wide with terror. For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then Clara lowered the crutch, her gaze piercing him. "Don't mistake kindness for weakness," she said, her voice steady, carrying across the square. The bullies stumbled back, defeated not only by her strikes but by the fire in her eyes. The crowd erupted in applause, the sound rising like thunder. For the first time in years, Clara stood tall, not despite her limp, but because of the strength it had forged within her. The world had always been cruel to Clara, or at least that was how it felt. She was born in the quiet of the farmhouse, the daughter of two hard-working farmers who had little time for complaints and even less for pity. Her childhood had been bright, filled with the smell of hay and the sound of animals, until the accident that changed everything. She was 7 when the horse bolted, her foot tangled in the rope. The doctors saved her life, but her leg never healed properly. Every step from then on carried a limp, and every glance she received seemed to carry pity, or worse, disgust. At first, Clara thought she could hide it. She tried to keep up with the other children, tried to run even when her legs screamed in protest, tried to smile when they mocked her. But cruelty has a way of finding its target. By the time she was 10, they had a name for her, Cripple Clara. They said it with a sing-song tone that haunted her even in her dreams. She learned silence early. If she didn't react, maybe they would stop. But they never did. They pushed her books into the mud, stole her lunch, tied her crutch to the flagpole so she had to crawl across the yard to retrieve it. Teachers turned a blind eye, whispering excuses. Kids can be mean, but it builds character. The truth was, no one wanted to intervene. She was different, and different was a mark that no one cared to protect. Her salvation came in the form of her grandfather. He was a man of few words, a figure who carried the weight of wars fought far away, his eyes sharp even in old age. He watched Clara with a gaze that saw beyond her limp. One night, after she had returned home with bruises hidden under her sleeves, he called her to the barn. "Clara," he said, holding a long wooden staff in his weathered hands, "the world will not go easy on you. But you can make it respect you." She stared at him, unsure of what he meant. He placed the staff in her hands. It was heavier than she expected. "You think your leg makes you weak. It doesn't. Weakness lives here." He tapped her chest. "Strength does too. You just need to decide which one you'll feed." From that night on, her life changed. While the world slept, Clara trained. At first, she stumbled, her movements clumsy, her body fighting her. But her grandfather was patient, guiding her with quiet firmness. He taught her how to grip the staff, how to feel the weight of it as an extension of herself. He made her practice balance drills, forced her to hold her stance even as her muscles trembled. "Every time you fall," he said, "you rise stronger. Remember that." Months turned into years. The staff became her friend, her confidant. It wasn't just wood, it was a reminder that she wasn't broken. Her grandfather taught her techniques from martial arts he'd learned overseas, how to strike, how to defend, how to use her smaller size as an advantage. He drilled her in awareness, making her close her eyes and identify sounds, the scrape of a boot, the shift of breath, the creak of a floorboard. "A warrior listens," he reminded her. "And a warrior adapts." The farm animals became her silent audience. Chickens scattered as she spun her staff, cows flicked their tails as she practiced footwork in the barn, and the family dog often lay nearby, watching with steady eyes as she moved with growing confidence. But Clara never spoke of her training. To the outside world, she remained the quiet farm girl with a limp, the one who endured mockery in silence. She let them believe she was helpless, because in her heart she knew a day would come when she would no longer need to hide. That day drew closer with each humiliation. The bullies grew bolder as she grew older. By 16, their cruelty had turned vicious. They cornered her after class, shoved her into lockers, whispered vile things about how no one would ever want her. One afternoon, a boy yanked her crutch away and tossed it across the hall. She fell hard, biting back tears as laughter filled the air. That night, she sat with her grandfather, the bruises on her arms dark beneath her sleeve. "Why do they hate me so much?" she asked, her voice small. "They don't hate you," he said, sipping his tea. "They fear you. Bullies always sense the strength in others, even if you don't see it yet. Their cruelty is just fear in disguise. But I don't feel strong," she whispered. "You will," he said, his eyes narrowing with certainty. "One day, you'll stop asking if you're strong. You'll show them." The Harvest Festival became the stage for that prophecy. The square was alive with music, fiddles singing into the night, lanterns swaying from strings above. Families laughed, children ran with sticky hands from candied apples, and the smell of roasted corn filled the air. Clara stood at her family's booth, arranging jars of honey and smiling faintly at customers. For a while, she felt normal, just another girl in the crowd. But shadows have a way of finding light. She saw them, before they saw her, the same group that had tormented her for years. They strutted through the square, their voices loud, their laughter sharp. Her stomach tightened, but she kept her eyes down. Maybe they would pass. Maybe they wouldn't notice. They noticed. "Well, if it isn't Cripple Clara," one of them sneered, stepping into the glow of the lanterns. His friends snickered behind him. "Didn't know they let farm freaks join the party." Clara froze, her hand tightening on the edge of the table. Customers nearby glanced over, but no one spoke. The bullies thrived on the silence of others. Another girl reached for a jar of honey, tipped it, and let it crash to the ground. Sticky liquid spread across the dirt. "Oops," she said, her grin sharp. Clara's father was distracted by another customer, unaware of what was happening. Clara bent down to pick up the shards, but a boy kicked them aside. "Why don't you dance for us, Clara?" he mocked. "Show us how cripples celebrate." The laughter rose again, louder, crueler. Someone shoved her shoulder, and she stumbled, barely catching herself on her crutch. The crowd around them shifted uncomfortably, but no one stepped forward. Pity wasn't protection. Something inside Clara snapped. The years of humiliation, the endless nights of training, her grandfather's voice echoing in her memory, they all collided in that single moment. She straightened, lifting her head, and for the first time, she didn't look away. Her eyes burned with fire as she gripped her crutch. The boy reached to shove her again, but she moved before he could touch her. With a swift motion, she swung the crutch upward, striking his wrist with a crack that made him yelp. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The others lunged, but Clara was ready. She pivoted on her good leg, swinging the crutch in a wide arc. It struck one boy in the knee, sending him sprawling into the dirt. She spun the crutch like a staff, each movement precise, each strike a declaration. The crowd roared in shock as the girl they had pitied for years transformed before their eyes. Dust swirled around her as she fought, her crutch a blur of motion. A kick to the stomach dropped another bully. A sharp jab to the shoulder sent another reeling. Her breath came steady, her face calm, her body alive with power. One boy tried to grab the crutch, but she twisted, using his momentum to flip him over her hip. He landed hard, groaning. The crowd erupted into cheers. For the first time, Clara wasn't invisible. She was unstoppable. The leader of the group staggered back, his eyes wide with disbelief. Clara advanced, her crutch steady in her grip. She swung it in a sharp arc, stopping inches from his throat. The crowd fell silent, holding its breath. Clara's voice carried across the square, steady and strong. "Don't mistake kindness for weakness." For a moment, time seemed to stop. The bullies' arrogance crumbled. They scrambled to their feet, stumbling back into the crowd, their laughter gone, replaced with fear. The townsfolk erupted into applause, the sound rising like thunder. Children cheered, parents clapped, and strangers who had once looked at her with pity now stared in awe. Clara stood tall, her chest rising and falling with steady breaths. For the first time in her life, she wasn't defined by her limp. She was defined by her strength. And in the shadows at the edge of the square, her grandfather watched, a faint smile tugging at his lips. She had become exactly what he always knew she could be.